Near the First People's Hospital of Yulin, Guangxi, China, many self-built houses stand closely together. Although the buildings are old and the surrounding environment is far from ideal, the area remains densely populated because of its proximity to the hospital. On March 22, 2020, in a rental house less than 200 meters from the hospital, a nurse living on the second floor discovered that her room's drainage pipe had suddenly become clogged. Sensing something unusual, she immediately called her boyfriend, a police officer, to inspect it. The two then reported the issue to the landlord to find a way to fix it. When the wastewater pipe was opened, they were horrified to find a large quantity of small pieces of meat jammed inside. The bizarre sight left everyone stunned. Who would dump so much meat down a drain? Clearly, something was very wrong. The landlord immediately called the police. When the authorities arrived and conducted a more thorough inspection, they extracted a total of 2,368 pieces of meat from the drainage pipe. But the most terrifying detail was revealed soon after forensic testing confirmed that the flesh was human tissue. This discovery plunged the entire building into an atmosphere of horror. Police quickly began inspecting suspicious rooms. In one unit on the third floor, they found a rice cooker containing human tissue and a black plastic bag holding other body parts. Who was the victim? Why had they been killed so brutally? And was the tenant on the third floor the killer? As usual, before we begin unraveling today's mystery, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support our channel. Now let's turn back time to uncover the chilling details behind this case. That very afternoon, March 22, 2020, as the tenant of the third floor unit was returning home from work, she was immediately arrested by police. Upon seeing the suspect, no one could believe their eyes. A petite young woman, slim with her hair tied in a ponytail, and a gentle face that looked no different from an innocent schoolgirl. Yet behind that fragile exterior hid a terrifying truth. Her actions were shockingly cruel. The suspect was Li Fengping, 25, a nurse at the First People's Hospital of Yulin. At the police station, she calmly confessed to killing Luo Bang, a doctor and deputy director of the hospital's spinal surgery department, before disposing of his body by dissolving it and flushing it down the drain. Earlier that afternoon, police had also received a call from Luo Bang's wife, reporting that her husband had been missing for 2 days. So what was the relationship between Li Fengping and Luo Bang? Why had it ended in such a horrifying murder? What was the real motive behind this crime? The answers gradually emerged during the investigation. In 2017, Li Fengping graduated from Guangxi Medical University with excellent results, which quickly earned her job offers from 3 hospitals through the school's recruitment program. One was a hospital in Nanning, the provincial capital, offering the best career advancement opportunities. A hospital in Liuzhou, which offered the highest salary. And finally, Yulin First People's Hospital, not outstanding in income or promotion opportunities, but with the most important advantage. It was close to Li Fengping's home, only about a 2-hour taxi ride to Bobai County, where her seriously ill mother lived. This meant she could easily take care of her mother when needed. After discussing with her father, Li Fengping decided to choose Yulin First People's Hospital, giving up the higher salary and broader prospects in order to stay close to her family. However, life did not go as she had hoped. Except for Lunar New Year, Li Fengping rarely had time to go home. She rented a small 30-meter room in an alley behind the hospital. Though old, cramped, and dilapidated, it cost only 350 yuan per month, helping her save on living expenses. At the beginning of her hospital job, she had to undergo a 3-year rotation training program applied to all young doctors and nurses. Before being assigned to a permanent department, she was rotated every few months to a different one. Each time she had to start over, doing the most basic tasks like an intern nurse. Li Fengping's salary was also very low, only about 2,000 to 3,000 yuan per month. Even though it could rise to 7,000 or 8,000 yuan after a few years, there was no guarantee she wouldn't be reassigned again and forced to start from scratch. This rotation program not only deprived young nurses of stability, but also left them feeling insecure adrift like duckweed in the hospital. In June 2018, Li Fengping was assigned to the neonatal department, then transferred to the spinal surgery department. One night during a night shift while chatting with a colleague, Li Fengping was introduced to an online gambling game. At the first trial later, Li Fengping completely evaded questions about that colleague. Even when the lawyer pressed, she refused to reveal the identity, insisting that person had nothing to do with her crimes. It was only at the second trial that the name Liu Muxia emerged. Liu Muxia, the head nurse of the hospital, was the one who unintentionally introduced Li Fengping to gambling. She herself only played the game as a way to earn some pocket money since the financial pressure of buying a house was overwhelming. According to Liu's testimony, the game was fairly simple. At first, she only placed small casual bets, but there was one time she lost over 10,000 yuan in a single round. Realizing the danger, Liu decided to quit, uninstall the game, and even advised Li Fengping that it should only be tried for fun. No one could have imagined that this casual suggestion would push Li Fengping into a path of no return. This online lottery game required no phone number registration or identity verification. It allowed unlimited bets, with players choosing numbers from 10 groups of Arabic numerals ranging from 1 to 10. In the beginning, the game let new players win a few rounds, tricking them into believing it was an easy way to make money. But in reality, the system was programmed to lure gamblers into an endless cycle of losses. This quickly pulled Li Fengping into the grips of gambling addiction. At first, her bets were only a few hundred yuan, but soon they rose to tens of thousands. There were even days when she lost hundreds of thousands of yuan in a single round. Despite this, Li Fengping refused to stop clinging to the hope that just one big win could turn things around. The largest amount she ever won in a single day was 100,000 yuan, but she failed to realize that everything was under the system's control. No one could win forever, and no gambler could walk away with lasting profit. Within just 1 year, 2 of Li Fengping's bank cards had made a total of 2.9 million yuan in transactions with the online gambling platform, a staggering figure for a nurse who had been working for less than 3 years. Gradually, the debt piled up to the point where Li Fengping could no longer control it. She became desperate for money, and it was at this moment that a horrifying plan began to form in her mind. Unwilling to accept defeat, Li Fengping came up with a risky plan, borrowing money to gamble, hoping to win big and pay off her debts, much like feeding a hen to get more eggs. From that moment, she began borrowing from anyone she could, telling colleagues that her mother was battling cervical cancer. Thanks to her bright personality, energetic demeanor, and diligent work ethic, she earned the trust of many around her. The hospital's strong reputation further reinforced her credibility, leaving no one to suspect her story. At first, the loans were small, just a few thousand yuan. Each payday, she would repay a portion, further cementing people's trust and encouraging them to continue helping her. But over time, the borrowing became more frequent, the amounts grew larger, and her colleagues' wallets effectively became her personal cash flow. Yet no matter how much she borrowed, the financial hole she had dug only grew deeper. In July 2019, Li secured a loan of 300,000 yuan from the Bank of China through a special financial support program for medical staff in Yulin. But even that wasn't enough. She continued to borrow from colleagues, citing reasons like her mother's illness, marriage expenses, and buying a home. Older nurses began to grow suspicious and refused her requests outright. However, some younger colleagues who had close relationships with her were still willing to help, even going so far as to use their own personal information to take out 300,000 yuan loans on her behalf. Trusting her completely, they never pressured her to repay. By the time the truth came to light, the money was long gone. Despite sinking deeper into debt, Li never once turned to her family for help. When loans from colleagues weren't enough, she turned to online lending platforms. In just 6 months, her bank account history was filled with transactions from countless sources. She borrowed from any place willing to lend, even if the annual interest rates reached as high as 36%, far beyond the legal limit. The deeper she sank into gambling, the more her mindset changed. She became almost 2 different people. One side of her could throw hundreds of thousands of yuan into online betting without a second thought. The other side lived with extreme frugality. She stayed in a shabby rental apartment costing only 350 yuan per month, and even hesitated for a long time before buying a refrigerator, eventually settling for a cheap one from Taobao for just a few hundred yuan. The contradiction was striking, spending massive sums on gambling, yet reluctant to spend modest amounts on herself. By October 2019, Li had reached the edge of desperation. With debts piling up and no way to repay them, she turned to Luo Bang, the deputy director of spinal surgery. The 51-year-old man was known for driving a BMW SUV, having a daughter in high school, and being considered wealthy by hospital staff. When Li approached him for a loan, Luo agreed, but under one personal condition. They met at a high-end hotel near the hospital. For Li, this was the turning point that would change her life forever. The meeting left her feeling humiliated, and the next morning she received 50,000 yuan. But it wasn't the money that stayed with her, it was the emotional scar. Things did not end there. Despite her resentment and resistance, Li continued to meet with Luo on multiple occasions at the same hotel. From October 2019 to February 2020, they met 13 times, and after each encounter, he transferred money to her. By March 2020, she had received a total of 200,000 yuan. What Li Fengbing received was not just money, it was also deep resentment and humiliation. However, Luo Bang was far from satisfied. He repeatedly threatened her. "Do you think you can escape from me? I have connections in the security bureau and the prosecutor's office. If you dare go to the police, I won't let you off." These threats and his control filled Li Fengbing with fear. She was just a girl from a poor rural area who had worked hard to earn her current job. By 2020, Li Fengbing had fallen into depression. At first, she felt powerless, terrified of retaliation, and afraid her family might suffer, so she began thinking about ending her own life. She attempted it 3 times, but each time failed. The first time, Li Fengbing filled a prescription for 100 sleeping pills. She had long suffered from insomnia, sleeping only 3 to 4 hours a night. That time, she swallowed 80 pills, but survived vomiting violently. The second attempt involved leaving the gas on overnight, but it didn't work. The third time, she used her access at work to take 2 vials of insulin from the hospital and injected herself with 800 units, but even then, death refused to take her. She continued to live in despair and resentment. In March 2020, with the COVID-19 pandemic forcing hotels to close, Luo Bang ordered her to rent an apartment near the hospital, promising to pay for it. She had no choice but to agree. On the night of March 20th, Luo Bang drunk came to the apartment. The moment he stepped inside, he began making demands. But at that time, Li Fengbing was in the middle of an online gambling game and ignored him. She kept finding excuses, claiming she hadn't eaten dinner, then saying she hadn't showered. Luo Bang grew angry, scolding her for being cold and even threatening to fire her. After a barrage of insults, he passed out, his snoring echoing in the room. Sitting at the edge of the bed, Li Fengbing clenched her fists. Memories of humiliation boiled inside her until she couldn't take it anymore. In a surge of rage, she searched on her phone. What to do when you hate someone? One suggestion read, "Make them disappear." Further down, she found an article titled, "How the Weak Can Defeat the Strong." Her mind was made up. Around 1 a.m., she grabbed a computer cable and approached the bed. She looped it around Luo Bang's neck and pulled tight. He woke up and struggled, and the two wrestled on the floor. But Li Fengbing didn't let go. Minutes later, his body went still. Shaken, she checked his pulse, nothing. She tried CPR, but it was useless. Fear surged, but she quickly calmed down. Unlocking his phone with his fingerprint, she transferred 98,000 yuan to her account. Most of it was immediately seized by online loan systems, leaving her with only 900 yuan. Refusing to give up, she took photos of Luo Bang's torso, bank card, and ID card, hoping to use the information for more loans. But the system required in-person verification, and every attempt failed. Before dawn, Li Fengbing searched frantically. How to completely destroy evidence, and how to transfer car or medical insurance without being detected. The more she tried to cover her tracks, the more she realized she was cornered. At 8 a.m. on March 21st, after everything had happened, Li Fengbing didn't panic or run. She calmly dressed, went to the hospital for work as if nothing had occurred. Around 6 p.m., she returned to the apartment and began dealing with the aftermath. According to her later account to her lawyer, Li Fengbing claimed that she did this to prevent the victim's body from decomposing, thereby buying more time and erasing evidence. The process lasted a full 20 hours from 8 p.m. until 5 p.m. the next day. She spent over 2,000 yuan on tools. What took place inside that rented room was truly gruesome and merciless, something beyond imagination. During that time, Li Fengbing even returned to the old apartment to collect clothes, dispose of a pair of stained white shoes, and search La Bang's car for an IOU she had once written. However, she found nothing because the documents had been stored in a cabinet at the victim's office. Later, a nurse from the spinal surgery department was the one who discovered those papers. Not stopping there in order to buy more time and avoid suspicion, Li Fengbing impersonated the victim. Using La Bang's phone, she texted his wife. When the wife asked why her husband hadn't come home for several days, she replied that La Bang was busy performing surgery in the suburbs. That same evening, when La Bang's wife called, she texted back claiming she was drunk and didn't want to answer the phone. However, on the evening of March 22nd, a growing sense of unease prompted La Bang's wife to call the hospital and check her husband's schedule. She quickly discovered that he had no surgeries scheduled in recent days. Realizing something was wrong, she immediately contacted the police. The investigation soon uncovered the horrifying truth behind La Bang's mysterious disappearance. After being arrested, Li Fengbing was charged with murder and theft. For these crimes, she faced the death penalty. When he learned that his daughter had fallen into the hands of the law, Li Fengbing's father collapsed in shock, unable to believe it was true. Trembling, he said, "Just 1 year. How could a single year destroy my daughter like this? What kind of person has she become?" Li Fengbing was born in 1995 in a small village in Baibai County, Guangxi Province. Her family was among the poorest in the village. To reach the village, one had to take a bus from Yulin City, then a long-distance coach, and finally walk quite a distance. While most families in the village lived in 2- or 3-story houses, the Li family still lived in an old single-room dwelling. As the eldest of 4 siblings, Li Fengbing bore the weight of being the eldest sister from an early age. Her mother suffered from uterine fibroids and was in poor health, unable to do heavy labor. The economic burden fell entirely on her father, who took on any odd job he could find to make ends meet. Despite their poverty, her father firmly believed that only education could help his children escape a life of hardship. He himself had been accepted into junior high school, but had to drop out because his family was too poor. Because of that, he was determined to ensure that his children could study no matter the cost. Thanks to his sacrifices, none of the 4 children had to quit school midway. Aside from Li Fengbing, her second sister was also admitted to a teacher's college in Guangxi. Her 3rd sister and youngest brother both attended the best high school in the county. Her father once proudly said of his eldest daughter, "She has her mother's spirit, hardworking and diligent since childhood. She studied while working part-time. Even when her mother was gravely ill, she took care of her siblings, yet still remained at the top of her class." With her outstanding academic performance, Li Fengbing could have been admitted to the best high school in the county. However, because her family was so poor, her father decided to send her to a technical college instead, reasoning that it would only take 5 years to graduate, whereas university would take at least 7 years before she could start working. Without opposing her father's decision, Li Fengbing chose to study nursing, partly because she had been used to taking care of her mother since childhood. She became the pride of her family as one of the few students from her village to study in Nanning, the provincial capital. Classified as a low-income student, she received a 6,000 yuan stipend each semester from the Yulu Scholarship Fund. Even in university, Li Fengbing maintained her stellar record, eventually becoming the head of the communications department for the School Psychology Association. Li Fengbing's father once dreamed that with strong knowledge and professional skills, his daughter would escape poverty, find a stable job, and settle in a big city. He urged her not to send money home, not to return to her hometown to work, and not to marry in the countryside. If all went well, he believed that in just a few years, she could buy a house in Yulin. She might even find a boyfriend in the city and build a new life. But all those hopes were shattered. The harsh reality showed that Li Fengbing was no longer the little girl her father once knew. When she was still a student, in order to save 200 yuan in travel expenses, she only returned home during winter and summer breaks. After she started working, even though the trip home took just over an hour and cost less than 100 yuan, she rarely visited her family. The distance between Li Fengbing and her family grew larger, and after a year, she took a turn that no one could have expected. On August 20th, 2020, at the Guangxi High People's Court, the first trial of Li Fengbing's shocking case officially began. For most of the time, the defendant described her criminal actions in a calm voice, showing no signs of panic or remorse. The prosecution asserted that this was a case with complex motives involving an illicit relationship and financial disputes. In contrast, Li Fengbing denied this, claiming that her relationship with the victim was neither emotional nor voluntary, but entirely forced and controlled. According to her, attacking the victim was the only way to free herself from pain and humiliation. However, faced with the evidence from the investigation, Li Fengbing's argument was completely unconvincing. All phone conversations between her and the victim had been deleted beyond recovery. In reality, on multiple occasions before the incident, Li Fengbing had voluntarily gone to a hotel to meet Luo Bang and engage in relations with him. The night before the crime, she had allowed the victim into her rented home. Based on this evidence, the court concluded that Li Fengbing had financial disputes with Luo Bang. After an argument, she killed the victim and attempted to dispose of the body. Her actions were deemed exceptionally cruel, causing severe consequences and a negative impact on society. Therefore, the defendant was to receive the harshest penalty under the law. On December 22, 2022, the Guangxi High People's Court held an appeal hearing via online video. This session drew significant public attention as the final decision on Li Fengbing's fate was about to be made. In the end, her appeal was rejected, the original death sentence was upheld, and the case was forwarded to the Supreme People's Court for approval. The case of Li Fengbing was not just an ordinary crime, it reflected a troubling reality in today's society. From a poor girl full of ambition, she suddenly spiraled into online gambling addiction and was dragged into the abyss. According to a 2019 report by the Swedish Public Security Bureau, out of 45,000 online gambling addicts, only 64 were women. However, over the past decade, this number has increased significantly. In the UK, over the last 5 years, the number of women in debt because of online gambling has grown at twice the rate of men. Studies show that one of the main reasons women fall into this trap is the rise of online lottery platforms. Women often face tremendous societal pressure, receive little support, and find it hard to break free from the cycle of temptation. They tend to be more vulnerable psychologically, making them easy prey for these traps. Li Fengbing, a young woman who was once a promising nurse with a stable job and an innocent appearance, was the last person anyone would expect to fall into such a path. But in reality, the lure of gambling or online lotteries comes in countless forms, each capable of dragging an ordinary person into the depths. Once trapped, it's incredibly difficult to turn back. Therefore, never put your trust in any online try-your-luck platform. We must stay alert and keep our distance, refusing them entirely, because this is not just a game of chance, it's a form of spiritual opium. Once you become immersed in it, your entire life could be buried. And that brings today's case to a close. What are your thoughts on this story? Share them in the comments below so we can discuss more. And before you go, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next classic case on this channel.